You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, or welcome to the Cricket Podcast if you are watching us on YouTube for our video/podcast, where we will be looking at the upcoming fifth test / one-off test between England and India at Edgbaston, which gets underway on Friday. I'm joined by Ross, who was with me just not long ago to talk about England's emphatic victory over New Zealand, and we've added a third to our contingent for the India preview. As I'm delighted to say, we're joined by DJ from Edges and Sledges to fill us in on the India side. So hello, DJ, how are you doing?
I'm well, Max. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you again, Ross.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, DJ. Always a pleasure. Big first question. As India bottled it last time in the fifth test match, are you excited for the upcoming game?
It's a good question because I think when we did our preview together, you'd predicted 3-1. If India had played that fifth test match last year, your prediction would have probably been right.
Yeah.
But the good news for England is now that the warm-up matches against New Zealand are over, we can actually get to the business of trying to win a test match against India again, which is a bit of a challenge. It has been a bit of a challenge. There's been 3 test match wins in the last 1 year for you guys, out of about 40, so... Yeah.
Well, our 1 in 17 record is now 4 in 20. So
but beating New Zealand is just like didn't Bangladesh beat them at home as well?
Yeah, we've got the new manager bounce. So like Sam Allardyce has come in with a relegation scrap. Like we'll see what happens. But there's loads to talk about, DJ. Purely on the fact that India are over in England, but instantly you've got King Legend is ruled out of the Test match, who's injured. So which is seriously good news for England because we know how much he likes batting. Rohit has just come down with COVID and is a major risk for the game. So that means your captain and your vice captain are out. So instantly, big questions on openers and your captaincy. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's do openers because that's probably the easier one.
Okay.
So Mayank has just been flown over, so he's likely to partner Gill in the absence of Rohit if Rohit isn't fit. Well, there's one thing, I guess. One thing is being COVID negative. The other thing is actually being match ready and match fit, because obviously COVID has its effects and it could go on for a bit. Mm-hmm. So Mayank will come over. He's been around for a bit. He'll fit in at the top. Obviously not as successful as Rohit, who was the top run scorer I think for India in this series so far, I guess.
He's been a real thorn in our side as well, hasn't he? Even if you go back to when England were touring India, like Rohit won India 2 games by himself, pretty much. Yeah. And other than the old leg side hook trap that we fell into a couple of times, he was probably one of the best opening batsmen I've seen play in England touring side for a long time. And
he just got his first overseas 100 in the Oval Test match as well. Things were looking good, and then obviously COVID ran rampant through the Indian side. But I think it's a big loss, to be honest. If Rohit doesn't play, it'll be a massive plus. If he does, it'll be a massive boost for the team if he does. So that's the first question. I think Gill will open with him. Gill's played in England before. He looked okay in the World Test Championship. Questions of him against a moving ball remain. But we'll see. I mean, he played Bolt in Saudi at Southampton in that 1 Test match, the World Test Championship final. But Anderson and Broad they're pretty experienced in their conditions and it'll be difficult to play. Captaincy. Well, Rohit hasn't really captained in England before in a Test match, so I'm not sure what we're missing there. But we haven't got Kohli as captain this time around, which is a bit strange. Pant has looked suspect. Bumrah is apparently the heir apparent. I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a lot of Indian emotion again going into bringing Kohli back for this series because he was skipper.
I want that to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I feel like it would be the logical move, though, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know who else you could reliably call up to do it.
Well, you could. I mean, Kohli can be a leader without being captain, right? He doesn't have to be captain. I think making him captain would be a backward step. for Indian cricket. There's a lot that's gone on since last September in Indian cricket. He's been removed from one-day captaincy against his wishes. He's resigned from Test captaincy after a loss against South Africa. Things have happened which I think mean that Kohli will not be a candidate for captaincy. I just don't see him coming back to do the job. But he will be a leader on the field. And it would be nice, and I said this on our preview early on today as well, it'd be nice if whoever takes over lets Kohli lead for the last 10 minutes while India perform the final rites in England. It would be nice.
just nips off for a loo break. Kohli, you make whatever decision you want. Brings himself onto bowl. Now that's the kind of thing I want to see.
Get Jimmy Anderson out and walk off into the sunset.
I'd quite like to see that. But I think there's quite an interesting contrast on the opener front. I mean, we were just talking in our review of the New Zealand game about how the jury is very much still out on England's openers, Alex Lees and Zach Crawley, whether they're the place. And we've got an India side here where they're losing KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma, and unfortunately for them, they have to bring in people with the class of Mayank Agarwal and Shubman Gill. Whether Agarwal might not be on the top of his game form wise at the moment, but in terms of ability, you can't doubt either of those. Having them just to turn up is quite a nice thing to have, isn't it?
There are two other options as well. Vihari's opened for Indian Test cricket in the past, and so has Cheteshwar Pujara, who is back in the side after being dropped.
Which I think is a good move. I think Pujara, he came across and
Division 2.
Yeah, he was incredible for Sussex. Like the guy, I think,
he averages like 120 or something. This season. It's ridiculous.
So where is Vihari going to play? So in terms of the 11, what can we think about in terms of the top 7?
So if Rohit is fit, Rohit obviously opens up. He is in Mayank. Gill will partner him. I'd put Pujara in at 3. Of course, King Kohli at 4. Vihari bats either 5 or 6. I think they might bat. So if you remember, again, this is going back to September or whenever the Oval Test match happened. Jadeja batted 5 to break up the right-handedness of the top 7. So I think Jadeja might bat 5. Vihari will bat 6. And I think 7 will be Pant. Because they want to break up the left-handers a little bit. But I think the batting order isn't that much of an issue. Rahane is gone, so we're not...
Shed a tear.
We're not still fussing around number 5. I think Vihari fits in naturally at number 5.
Okay. So just to finish off the batting, Virat Kohli has not hit a century for 3 years. Is it written in the stars that he gets it in this Test match and, as you say, puts England to bed and just re-establishes that world order of being just like, no, England, you need to try a little bit harder?
Yeah, so the last time he came to England with question marks about his batting was 2018. The first Test match was at Edgbaston. He had previously averaged 13.5 in the 2014 tour. He promptly went on and scored 149 with the most magnificent celebration. I have to say, that is one of my favourite Kohli celebrations. And then went on to score 593 runs in that summer. So he'll have good memories from Edgbaston, although India did lose that Test match, the brilliance of Stokes. But, I mean, that would be a script. That would be a script that would be well written. King Kohli coming back to form, scoring 150 at Edgbaston. Maybe it's written in the stars, or maybe it's written for Jimmy Anderson to... if David Malan hadn't dropped Kohli on 21, we wouldn't have had any of that. I don't know. It'll be good. We didn't know whether Jimmy would be around to bowl to Kohli, but he will be. And
he will.
I'm hoping that Kohli comes back to form. It would be a good result for Indian fans and world cricket. I mean, world cricket needs Kohli scoring runs, right? Good guy to watch.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be there actually. So I'm going on the second day. Edgbaston is just fantastic to go to, and I think watching England.
Are you sitting in the Hollies?
I'm sitting next to the Hollies. The Hollies was sold out pretty much immediately, and as I get into my 30s, I can no longer keep up in the Hollies. So I've just gone to the Stanley end. I think it's just the one next to it. But it promises to be a really enticing fixture. What can we expect from the bowling front? So one of our favourite cricketers is Ravichandran Ashwin. He was obviously tested positive for COVID last week, but from my understanding, he was at least playing or at least training at Leicestershire, where the camp was based. So do we see him coming to this side? And Max, is it a toss up between him and the Lord Thakur, or is it what are we thinking there?
Well, it's an interesting one with the sort of conditions that we've had in England so far this year. I think you can see it being a question of, do you play the extra spinner? Because I mean, we saw it at Headingley. The spinner came into it, and England have used that to their benefit against New Zealand. I could see DJ shaking his head. He's
junk wickets, man. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's junk wickets. That's not a fifer.
Yeah, but India's spinners don't take junk wickets, do they? So on pitches that might help them, would it be worth going with Ashwin and Jadeja?
I realistically don't think Ashwin's going to play. Lord Thakur has scored twin 50s, beaten Ian Botham's record in the last Test match that they played in this country. And I think he got Rory Burns out when India weren't looking like getting a wicket as well.
Makes things happen.
He was bowling some ridiculous wobbly seam stuff in South Africa, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he just does stuff, and it's I don't know. You can't explain it.
Yeah,
it's one of those cricketers that take wickets and score runs and take catches running backwards one-handed.
It's the Indian Sam Curran. We've said it before.
Yeah, what's happened to Sam? He's just dropped off the scene.
He was injured. I think he had a stress fracture in his back, like every other England bowler in the last 2 years. But he's back playing for Surrey. He scored 100 against Kent yesterday. But then again, 4 Surrey players scored 100 against Kent yesterday. So not saying much.
Yeah, he definitely won't be back in the side. We've stuck with the squad, but Sam Billings has been added to it, and just in case Ben Folkes doesn't recover in time, which I think is a good sign. I don't want them to give the gloves to either Ollie Pope or Johnny Bairstow. We need to refrain from doing anything too drastic, or as we were talking about earlier on the podcast, giving Joss Butler the opening slot like Kumar Sangakkara suggested. Bad idea. So to make up the rest of the team, DJ, who can we expect? Siraj, Siraj, Shami and Bumrah?
That's a good question, because I think it will be Bumrah and Shami. They pick themselves. The question about the third seamer is whether you play... So you've got Umesh, you've got Prasidh, and you've got Siraj. On recent form, Siraj hasn't... It's weird though, because you can't really pick a test team based on IPL form. But
we'll try.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to pick Joss Butler in the English. But he hasn't done that well recently. He hasn't been in wicket taking form, whereas Prasidh and Umesh have, and there is an argument to play Umesh as a third seamer. But we know Siraj, it depends on how much the management rates Siraj, because the old Kohli and Shastri really backed him. They gave him the license. They told him to get under England's skin, which they did. He got booed every time he came on to bowl.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd go with Umesh, but that's maybe because Siraj is really annoying.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Siraj.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the moments that stick out in my memory from last year is, of course, the last ball to Jimmy Anderson, but in the next Test match, when your team's been bowled out for 78 and the crowd is giving you stick at Headingley, he goes up to them and goes this. And you're just like, dude, you can't keep this guy down. He has no idea about the match situation, nothing to do with the series. He's just all out aggression. And I mean, under the Shastri Kohli regime, that was probably okay. Under the Rahul Dravid Rohit Sharma regime, things have probably calmed down a little bit. There's more calculation that goes into it. Prasidh Krishna could be a dark horse for a Test match debut, actually, because he's a little bit like Ishant Sharma, tall, lanky, hits the deck, will keep it tight. And with the form that you guys have been in, I mean, you're playing Test cricket like it's limited overs cricket, right? Everyone's going at 6, and Siraj had he had an economy of 11 in the IPL. He's going to go at 16 with Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes and all of these guys go after him. So I think his spot might be in danger, which is a shame, because if this had happened last year, he would have definitely played that last Test match, right?
And that is that reason, DJ, that regardless of how good Siraj, Umesh, and Prashi Krishna are, there's still a bit of wood that Ashwin has over the team. Yeah. And sometimes it might not be about conditions, might not be about actually who's best suited to play. Sometimes it's about playing the person that's in front of you on that team. And Ashwin has Stokes' number, and there might just be a thing in there of being like, you know what, if we can keep Stokes at bay, we win this Test match.
And that's a really good point. And the reason Ashwin did not play any of the games last year was because India had been burnt in the World Test Championship final. Mm-hmm. Because they'd played 2 spinners. Ashwin had bowled pretty well, actually. He'd taken 2 wickets, I think, in the last innings where New Zealand chased the runs down. He was the only one who took any wickets in that innings. But because we played 2 spinners and lost, the Kohli Shastri think tank went with, we're going to play 1 spinner. It's going to be Jadeja because he can bat.
Yeah.
It may be that the Rohit Dravid regime goes, we're going to play our best bowlers. And there is no doubt that Ashwin is a more experienced cricketer. He's got more control. The only thing he hasn't done is take a bunch of wickets in England. Mm-hmm. And he has struggled. He struggled in Southampton. He was outbowled by Moeen Ali in the 2018 series. So there's all of that will count against him.
Yeah.
And Kohli really backed his seamers, and Rohit hasn't really captained overseas. So we don't know what his philosophy around Test cricket overseas is. We knew what Kohli. There was no way Ashwin would have played this under Kohli.
Yeah, there was a clear blueprint under Kohli, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was. We're going to go hard. We're going to go fast. And I'm going to get guys who are just going to run through a brick wall for me. And Siraj was one of them. Yeah. But maybe Ashwin gets more time under this regime. We'll see.
Well, with the new England approach to playing overseas spinners, maybe Ashwin will finally be quids in wicket-wise. Because if England take the approach they did against Bracewell to Ashwin, I think Ashwin might be canny enough to win those battles.
Yeah,
so there's a different angle to
Zach
it.
Crawley played against Bracewell yesterday. It was exactly how I get out on most weekends. Trying to hit a beautiful cover drive and just spoon it to cover.
I genuinely did. I tried to do that on Sunday yesterday, and I was on 1 run. And I was like, that's the slot. I'm going to hit that for 6. Why? I was opening the batting, spooned it straight to mid-off. But yeah, and if I'm sitting as an England fan, I am more worried about Ashwin turning up and playing against us at Edgbaston than him not being in the side. If he's not playing in the side, I think England, there's a level where they're just like, do you know what? That's a slight advantage to us. Not overall. I still think India are favourites in this Test match. I think we cannot sit there and go, England are the greatest Test team, as much as we were joking about it earlier on the podcast. India are a real difficult opponent in any conditions. But what I think is really strong about this India lineup is that they've now got experience of winning in England. And I think having that just to fall back on, and how well Bumrah did, especially last year, is something that they can really take to the bank. And it's something to be worried about, I think, for England.
Yeah, but this team has lost 2 Test matches against South Africa as well, under Kohli. Trying to bowl teams out in the 4th innings, which hasn't happened. So, and England have been pretty good at chasing in the 4th innings. So,
yeah,
not good signs for Indian fans, I have to say.
Max, that's probably a good question to probably end on, around when it comes to the toss. So here, England have chased, and we've chased really, really well. Will there be something that whoever stands in as captain is worried about in that situation? Will it be a case of, we're going to get as many runs on the board as possible, but we'll let England bat last? Or will it be a case of going, do you know what, let's risk England doing it and see what happens?
Might depend on the team you pick. I mean, if you've got Ashwin and Jadeja in the side, get England batting last. England may have been good at chasing New Zealand, but they've chased against New Zealand side that in Test 2 didn't have Carl Jamieson, so we're a player down. And then in the 3rd Test, decided to make themselves a player down from the start of the game. So it wasn't quite, I don't think it was quite the same challenge, I suppose, as it might be if it were Ashwin and Jadeja. So, if you're going to go with that approach, then I don't think you should have any concerns about putting, giving England the opportunity to chase. And, if it's sunny, if the pitch looks good, you got to bat. You can't think about these things. You just got to make the most of it and put the runs on the board.
Make hay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, DJ, let's finish on a prediction. Where's your prediction going? Are England going to win or India going to win?
I have to say that England are going to win, just based on current form.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been looking at the forecast, and it's for rain for the first 3 days. So that works out okay. 2-1. Draw's a draw. Series win. But seriously, I think England look strong. England look... they've got momentum behind them. They've got a new captain, new coach. It's showtime.
Max,
this is where it counts. This is the one that counts. Right?
This is the one that counts. Max, the warm-up games, as you say, that was just we're playing New Zealand B team. This doesn't even count. Max, where's your loyalty going to lie for the prediction?
How can I not back England after those 3 warm-up games? It was a sight to behold. It's going to be interesting, provided the rain holds off and we do get to see the cricket that we want to see. I think there's going to be all sorts of carnage.
I can't wait for Bumrah to bounce Jimmy again. That will get things.
Yeah, I reckon we could see like two first innings scores of about 130, and in this test, and it could be a bit of a weird one, I reckon.
A real dogfight.
Yeah.
Well, I do have tickets, as I said, for the second day, so wouldn't be surprised if that gets rained out and I have to pay for the train and hotel fees. But get the £50 back for the test match. Anyway, I reckon India are going to win. I think I think it will be a bit of a course correction. I think there'll be a bit where England quite possibly will. I think a confidence is always great. We've talked about before you joined on the show, DJ, around that confidence that Ben Stokes is bringing to this side. But we were playing it as a depleted New Zealand team. And I think that does need to be tempered a little bit, depending on what pitch rolls out, what the conditions are like. Granted, that can all be the variable in it. But the lineup that India have, I think is just far more challenging, and the fact that they've got a world-class spinner in Jadeja, they could have 2 with Ashwin. They've got the best fast bowler in the world in Jasprit Bumrah. Shami could rinse the top order based upon what we've seen recently, and Siraj has got underneath the skin of everybody in that side, and it's what helps them alongside Bumrah get under the skin in Lords, and England lost it completely. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, it should be a brilliant ding-dong is what I'm going to call it.
Brilliant ding-dong. It's a healthy dose of English pessimism. I like it.
Well, someone's got to bring us back down to earth, haven't they, Ross?
I do indeed. DJ, thank you ever so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Matt.
And goodbye, everybody. See you soon.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.